I never thought the person who'd hurt me the most would be the one who used to braid my hair, who once stood beside me on my wedding day, holding my bouquet when my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My sister, Tamika, wasn't just blood. She was my best friend. Until she wasn't. Until love turned to jealousy, and jealousy turned to sabotage. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a misunderstanding, a mistake, something that could never happen again. The second time, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern, a game she played, and I was always the fool. But this story isn't about heartbreak. It's about what happens when the people closest to you decide you don't deserve happiness, when your own blood decides to poison everything good in your life, not once but twice. And what happens when you finally snap? Because when the police pulled me in, they thought they were dealing with a monster. But no one asked why. No one looked back at the years of gaslighting, manipulation, and betrayal that led to that night. But you will. You'll hear it all, from the first betrayal to the last breath. So ask yourself, if someone stole your peace, your marriage, your sanity, not once but twice, how far would you go to make it stop? Stick around. This story doesn't end the way you think it will. We grew up in the same small house in Memphis, shared the same room, the same clothes, even the same dreams. Tamika was only a year older than me, but you'd think we were twins from how close we were. Our mum worked 2 jobs, and our dad wasn't in the picture, so Tamika stepped in a lot, combing my hair before school, walking me home, helping me with homework. She was the protector. I was the quiet one, the soft-spoken sister who believed in people too much. By the time I turned 25, I had saved enough from working as a nurse assistant to rent a modest apartment and marry my college sweetheart, Andre. He wasn't flashy or rich, but he was stable, gentle, dependable. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And for a while, I thought that was enough. But even during our honeymoon phase, Tamika was always there, always visiting, always calling, always needing something. She'd say things like, "I just like being around y'all. You give me hope." And at first, it was flattering. She didn't have a man at the time, and I thought maybe she was lonely, until I started noticing things that didn't feel right. One night I came home early from a shift and found them sitting too close on the couch, laughing at something that stopped the moment I walked in. Another time, I found a text on Andre's phone from T that read, "Hope you're not too sore from last night." He swore it was a joke, an inside thing between them from back in the day. Tamika laughed it off too, and I believed them, because who wants to think their own sister would betray them like that? But I started watching closer. She'd show up wearing tighter dresses, call him Dre like they'd been close all along. One day I overheard her on the phone whispering, "I think she suspects something." That was the moment the air changed. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself if I didn't see it with my own eyes, maybe it wasn't real. Until the day I came home from work early, again, and found her car in the parking lot. She wasn't supposed to be there. Neither was he. But both of them were inside. The door was unlocked, and I walked in on them in my bedroom, my bed, my sheets, my life, shattered in one breath. They didn't even look surprised. Andre reached for his clothes. Tamika just said, "You always were too soft to keep a man like him." And I swear, my legs buckled. I didn't scream. I didn't hit her. I just walked out and never came back. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later, cut off Tamika completely, changed my number, moved across town, buried the pain in work. Everyone told me time would heal it. But what they didn't know is that time didn't heal betrayal. It just made it quieter. And somewhere deep inside me, something broke that day. Something I didn't even realize until it happened again. Because years later, Tamika wasn't done with me yet. It took me 3 years to open up to another man. His name was Malcolm. He was nothing like Andre. Older, calmer, owned his own trucking company, and had a teenage son from a previous marriage. I met him through a patient's family at the hospital. He wasn't flashy, didn't talk smooth, but he listened. After everything I'd been through, listening felt like luxury. Malcolm didn't try to fix me. He respected my boundaries. When I told him about Tamika and Andre, he said, "Family can cut deeper than strangers, but I won't add to your scars." And for the first time in a long while, I believed a man. When we got married, I kept it small. No big white dress, no bridal party, no church choir. Just me, Malcolm, his son, and a courthouse. And Tamika? She wasn't even invited. I hadn't spoken to her since the night I walked out on my first marriage. My therapist said that was okay, that I didn't owe her forgiveness just because she was blood. So imagine my shock when 6 months into my second marriage, I found her sitting at my kitchen table, laughing, drinking, with Malcolm. He told me he ran into her at a gas station and didn't want to be rude, said she just stopped by for a minute to say hello. He looked nervous, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Tamika just smiled and said, "You can't get rid of me that easy, sis." I felt the blood drain from my face. I told her to leave. She did, slowly, but not before whispering something in my ear that chilled me. "He's cute. You always did have a type." That night, I confronted Malcolm. He swore nothing was going on, that he didn't even know she was my sister until she told him, that he only let her in because she made it sound like you and her had made up. He was lying, and I knew it, because the next day, I found her earring under our bed. Just one. Gold hoop. Same kind she wore in high school. I didn't say a word. Not right away. I wanted proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his phone. And there it was. A string of texts from a number saved under Terrence, except Terrence sent pictures of red nails, selfies with her face half cut off, and a message that read, "Tell your wife I stopped by again." I lost it. Not just at him, at myself, for believing, for trusting, for hoping blood betrayal only happens once. I moved out that night, took just my clothes and my dignity, left my wedding ring on the table. A week later, I filed for divorce. And guess what? 2 months after that, Tamika moved in with him. They didn't even hide it. She posted a picture of herself on his porch holding his dog, captioned, "Second chances are sweeter." The comments were full of laughing emojis and fire symbols. No one knew the truth because I'd never told it. I'd kept quiet the first time, for the sake of family. I stayed quiet the second time, out of shame. But when Malcolm's ex-wife reached out to me, saying their son had started acting strange, I told her everything. I thought maybe Tamika would finally face some consequences. Instead, she doubled down, told people I was crazy, obsessed, jealous of her happiness. She even accused me of stalking them, filed a restraining order that got thrown out in court, but the damage was done. My name was tarnished, my heart beyond broken. And yet, as much as I hated her, as much as I replayed the betrayals every sleepless night, I never wanted to hurt her. Not yet. That came later, after she crossed one final line, a line I could never uncross. For a while I disappeared. I left town, stayed with a cousin upstate, started a part-time job at a diner just to clear my head. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer calls. I just vanished. But peace doesn't last when your past is still playing house with your ex-husband. One night, after a late shift, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually ignored them, but something told me to pick up. It was Malcolm's teenage son, Corey. His voice was shaking. He said, "Miss Alicia, I need to tell you something. I didn't know who else to call." He was whispering, terrified. Said Tamika had gone through his phone, said she found out he was still talking to me. Then he paused, and what he said next made my stomach turn. "She touches me when Malcolm's not home." I couldn't breathe. I asked him to repeat it. He said it slower, like he was ashamed of the words coming out of his mouth. I lock my door, but sometimes she waits till I fall asleep. I knew I had to stay calm, to keep him talking. I asked if he'd told his dad. He said he tried, but Malcolm didn't believe him, thought he was acting out because of the divorce. I reported it the next morning. Went to the police, told them everything Corey said, gave them my call log, his number, the times. I didn't care if Tamika hated me more than ever. I wasn't staying silent this time. But just like that, she vanished. No one could find her. Malcolm claimed she had left him, took her things and disappeared. Said he was shocked, claimed he was heartbroken. But deep down, I knew better. Tamika never ran from a fight. She was hiding. Because she knew what was coming. I kept pushing the police. Corey was placed with his mother pending investigation. But Tamika, still missing. Then one evening, about 3 weeks later, I came home from the diner to find my apartment door slightly cracked open. I froze. My cousin wasn't home. I hadn't given anyone else a key. I pushed the door gently, and that's when I saw her. Tamika, sitting on my living room couch, cross-legged like she belonged there. Same gold hoops, same smug grin. Except this time, she wasn't smiling. She said, "You always did have a flair for the dramatic." She wasn't armed, but her presence was violent enough. She accused me of ruining her life, said I'd turned Malcolm against her, that I'd manipulated Corey, that I was jealous of her happiness. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Malcolm didn't even want you. He was mine from the start. You were just the test run." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The rage was boiling too close to the surface. She walked right past me, slow and deliberate, whispering, "Next time, I won't knock." And just like that, she was gone again. I reported the break-in, but with no forced entry and no threats recorded, the police told me there wasn't much they could do. That's when I changed. I stopped waiting on justice. I started preparing for war. I set up security cameras. I started documenting everything, and I began digging into her past, into Malcolm's company, into things I once ignored. What I found was disturbing. Malcolm and Tamika had taken out a joint business loan in my name, forged my signature, faked documents, the address listed on the bank paperwork, my old home, the one I fled after the divorce. They were laundering money and dragging my credit with them. I was done. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a targeted destruction of everything I had left, and they weren't finished. Because the next time Tamika showed up, she didn't come alone, and she didn't leave quietly. The day it all tipped over wasn't violent, it was quiet. I'd been watching them. Not with binoculars or anything, but the way a person watches what might bite them if they got too close. The security cameras I installed caught everything. Tamika had returned to Malcolm's house, sneaking in at night, leaving early mornings. Her car was never out front. She was being careful. Too careful. Then one morning, I got a call from a blocked number. No one spoke at first. I was about to hang up when a voice said, "You know too much." It was female, calm, cold. Then the line went dead. I called the detective who'd handled Corey's initial case. I told him everything, the forged loan documents, the break-in, the call. He said the case was under review, but they needed more substantial evidence before reopening anything. That's when I realized something. They weren't going to save me. I was going to have to save myself. So I started piecing together what I had. Timestamps from the cameras, screenshots of forged documents, the voice message. I even followed Malcolm to his office once, just to confirm he was still using my social security number for business accounts. But the real twist, Tamika wasn't just back with Malcolm. She was pregnant. I only found out when I ran into one of Malcolm's co-workers at a grocery store, a woman I barely knew. She smiled awkwardly and said, "Heard you two are expecting again. Congratulations." I froze. She mistook me for Tamika. She said Tamika had been visiting Malcolm's office, saying she was his wife, talking about the baby, even booking a photo shoot in my name for maternity pictures. She had replaced me. And Malcolm, he was letting her. He wasn't manipulated anymore. He was in on it. They were trying to erase me, legally, financially, socially. I started pulling back. I knew something worse was coming. I could feel it. It was in how quiet they had gotten. No new harassment, no messages, no calls, just silence. That's when I found the eviction notice on my door. Apparently, I hadn't paid rent in 3 months, except I had, every month. Auto debit from my account. But someone had changed the banking info tied to my lease. Someone had my login. I walked into the property manager's office shaking. She pulled up my account, frowned and said, "This doesn't make sense. You changed the bank details yourself." She turned her screen to show me, and there it was, a bank account in my name, but not mine. Then I remembered, when Tamika sat in my apartment. That day she broke in. She must have installed spyware. I called the bank. I filed a police report. Still, no one was arrested. No charges filed. Malcolm and Tamika were ghosts when it came to formal complaints. No fingerprints. No direct threats. Just shadows. I knew then the only way to stop them wasn't through police or pity. It had to be through exposure. So I set a trap. I told Malcolm's assistant I wanted to meet with him to sign divorce reversal papers, documents to reinstate our previous marriage status for a joint asset claim. Total lie. But I needed Tamika to hear about it. And I knew she would. I made sure the meeting location was public. A quiet corner booth at a diner across town. I wore a wire. And I brought a second phone to record, just in case. I waited and waited. Then, 25 minutes late, Malcolm arrived. Alone. But just 5 minutes after he sat down, Tamika walked in. Not angry, not yelling, just smug. She slid into the booth beside him and said, "So this is how you want to do it?" I kept the conversation neutral, baiting them to talk. And they did. They talked about how they were going to bankrupt me, move the baby into my name. "The crazy ex-wife won't know what hit her," Tamika said, laughing. Then Malcolm slipped. He mentioned the spyware. Tamika looked at him sharply. Too late. I leaned back, reached for my purse and said, "Thank you. That's all I needed." That's when Tamika lunged across the table. The manager had to pull her off me. The police were called. Again. But this time I had audio. And that changed everything. The day the audio was turned in, I was told not to expect much. "These things take time," they said. But something had changed. The detective who dismissed me weeks earlier called me directly. "That recording and was damning," he said. "We're reopening everything." 2 weeks later, Tamika was arrested at a prenatal appointment. Malcolm was picked up from his office, both charged with conspiracy to defraud, identity theft, and unlawful surveillance. Tamika faced an additional charge of attempted assault. That lunge across the diner table had sealed her fate. I wish I could say I felt victorious. But the truth, I felt numb. It wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about the years I lost, the men I trusted, the sister who once braided my hair before school, who had crawled into bed with the man I married twice and tried to erase my existence from the world. The trial became a local sensation. Tamika, always poised and photogenic, came to court in designer maternity wear and tried to paint me as unstable. "Obsessed," she said. "Delusional." But then the bank statements were introduced, the forged documents, the spyware, the audio. Their smug laughter echoing through the courtroom sealed everything. It took the jury less than a day. Malcolm was sentenced to 8 years in prison for financial fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Tamika, my own sister, was sentenced to 6 years, with her parental rights temporarily suspended pending a psychological evaluation after birth. Their baby was placed in the care of a neutral guardian. And me? I moved. Out of state. Quietly. I changed my name, got a new number. But before I left, I did one last thing. I filed a civil suit for emotional damages, property loss, and malicious interference. And I won. Every dime Malcolm thought he could hide, I got it. Every lie Tamika spun into paperwork, the court unspun. I bought a small home in a new city, started therapy, started over. And the biggest twist? I didn't disappear quietly. I started telling my story, not for sympathy but for others who've lived in the shadow of betrayal, manipulation, and control disguised as love. Because evil doesn't always come kicking down the door. Sometimes it whispers from the mouth of someone who shares your blood.